there friends, it's me, Haley, and today I thought I would do a list of the books that I'm most grateful for. Obviously I'm still establishing my channel, still learning how to do things, still learning how to talk to a camera, which is really hard for me. And so I figured to sort of continue with my introduction, I would talk about the kind of books that I'm into, the genres that I'm into, through the books that I think have influenced me the most and that I'm most grateful for their impact. Mostly I tend to read YA and adult fantasy. I also read YA contemporary and some historical fiction. Occasionally if there's a history book that just sounds interesting enough to me, I'll read it, but typically it has to be a sign for me to want to read it. I do also read some middle grade occasionally, and I'm trying to get more into horror, but I'm just not that much of a fan, so we'll see how that goes. I do sometimes read classics, and I know that obviously doing reviews on classics and other older books like I'm kind of doing isn't really that popular because everybody's already read those books, but I'm just doing this for fun, booktube's just for fun, and I'm here to talk about the books that I enjoy. So even if they're a little older, I'm still playing the catch-up game. There are lots of books that have come out in the last few years that have been phenomenal that I haven't read yet, and I just want the opportunity to talk about them. The first book on my list is Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. This should come as no surprise. I think everybody is grateful to J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter for some reason or another. I'm not going to make a job about J.K. Rowling. I'm not going to make a job about J.K. Rowling. I mean, the new movie for the new series has just come out, so Harry Potter is still having an effect so much longer after its original publication date. Everybody has a reason to love this series, and it's been a huge influence for me. It was one of the first series that I read on my own. I did start the series with my mom, and then I read it on my own, and it was the first series of books that I got into as an independent reader. So Harry Potter means the world to me. It's my favorite series of all time, some of the best characters. It's a lot of fun, and I'll never give up on this series, and I'll probably never give up on J.K. Rowling. The next two books on this list are on the list for the same reason, so I'm going to introduce them together, even if they don't seem like they go very well together. And that is Gilda Joyce, Psychic Investigator by Jennifer Allison, and A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. Now, I said these books are different, and they are really different, but they helped me in the same way, and I'm grateful to them for the same reason. Both got me back into reading when I'd been in a hell of a dry spell. I first read Gilda Joyce sometime in elementary school or maybe early middle school when it had been a while since I'd read anything for fun. There were people who would tease me for reading, I would get in trouble for reading in class, and so part of me I think just decided reading was more trouble than it was worth, and part of me also wanted to explore other activities. But I got hooked back into reading with Gilda Joyce, and Jennifer Allison was the first author I'd ever spoken to. I emailed her to tell her how much her books had meant to me and how they'd gotten me back into reading, and she even went so far as to invite me to a book signing in New York. But since I'm in Texas and I was like 10, that wasn't really all that doable. But it was so nice of her, and this series has meant something special to me for a really long time because of her kindness and because of what it meant for me as a reader. A Court of Thorns and Roses has a similar meaning to me. I was in my third and final year in college when I read this. It had been almost 2 years, I think, since I had read anything for fun that I hadn't been assigned. A friend of mine introduced this to me while we were traveling, and I got hooked. At first I was a little dubious, but after a while, and especially after I read the second book, I was so in love with it. It's inspired my writing, it's inspired some more of my choices and what I pick up to read, and so I'm really, really grateful to Sarah J. Maas for writing this, and for A Court of Thorns and Roses for being such an interesting, thought-provoking, and yet at the same time really typical YA novel that kept me reading. The next book on this list is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. I think this book already gets a lot of love, and it's all really well deserved. In fact, there may not be enough love for this book. And the movie's not bad either, which is a pretty nice compliment to be able to pay to a book adaptation these days. The Book Thief was one of the first historical fiction novels I ever read, and I was immediately hooked. My family has a lot of history with the Holocaust and anti-Semitism in the early 20th century, so Holocaust fiction means quite a bit to me. If I do end up reading historical fiction, it's typically World War II or Holocaust stories. The Book Thief obviously has such an interesting perspective, a fun narrator, and really lovable, adorable, heartbreakingly honest protagonists that I will remember till the day I die. And rereading this book is always an opportunity to be grateful for what I have, but also for stories like this, that people can tell stories like this. The next book on this list is Twilight by Stephenie Meyer. For a lot of my life, Twilight has served as sort of a compass pointing in the direction of what not to do as a writer and a reader. but there's no doubt about it that Twilight has been extremely influential to me and probably to everybody else who read it. Nobody was lying when this book was called a phenomenon, and the saga itself really was a phenomenon. Now that it's over and we've had a little bit of space, obviously most of us, myself included, are having second thoughts about this series. But it's undeniable that this series was extremely popular and there were reasons for it. Now looking back, there are things I really like about it and things I really don't like about it, but it still has a really special place in my heart. I finished the first 3 books I think in a week or so, and then I finished Breaking Dawn not that long after. And so it was just a really important series. I have memories of talking with my friends at school about this book, of people giving me fake spoilers, of us crying together over Edward and New Moon, so it's got a lot of happy memories for me, and I'm grateful for the impact it's had on my aesthetic and my style and my preferences, so I really am still grateful to Twilight. The next book I'm grateful for is The Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan. I have been in love with these books ever since I started them. Rick Riordan has a special place in my heart, being from my hometown, but our shared background aside, I have been in love with these books forever. I've always been a huge fan of mythology, especially Grecian and Egyptian mythology. As you can see behind me, I've got like everything he's ever written for kids, but it's been a really fun journey tracking where he goes with his writing and tracking where his characters go. I think it's inspiring to me how he's managed to maintain a similar cast of characters throughout, you know, however many books it is that he's written now. I can't even think of them, and I should probably count them, but I'm not going to right now. But it's been a huge inspiration to me, and I'm grateful to him for making mythology accessible to kids and for giving us such an interesting cast of characters that, you know, are undeniably lovable. I will probably continue to read anything that Rick Riordan writes for the rest of my life. And the last one I'm going to talk about on this list for books I'm grateful for is The Bad Beginning by Lemony Snicket, the start of the series of unfortunate events. I think most people who have read this series have really enjoyed it. I know everybody I've talked to has always really said great things about it, and clearly now with the Netflix series it's regained some popularity, and I think I'm mostly grateful to this book for how much it taught me. It taught me new words, it taught me a new perspective on life, I think. It gave me an optimism that shouldn't have resulted from such a sad story, but I think that showing kids in the midst of such a horrible situation and showing what they do to overcome it has actually been a really life-changing and inspiring way to look at life for me, and it's changed the way I view younger characters in fiction. And I'm just really grateful to this series for the story and the characters it gave us, but also for the optimism and the learning opportunity. So those are all the books I'm going to talk about on my thankful book list today. Clearly there are so many other books that I'm grateful for, so many other books that have inspired me and changed my outlook, changed my perspective on life, but I'm going to wait to talk about some of those in a different video. In the new year, I promise I'm going to try to talk about more new books and get ahead of some releases and try to be really on top of what's coming out and talk about that. But there's always going to be some stuff I'm catching up on. I do like reading classics, and if I ever get the opportunity to sit down and really think about what I've read, I might do an analysis video, or I might do some sort of review for that. Not that anyone really cares about reviews of Jane Austen or anything like that anymore, but it's just something fun. BookTube is meant to be fun. I'm here to have fun and talk about books that I like, and hey, if I can convince you to read a book that you've been putting off reading for 5 years because it's just sitting on your shelf, then I'm happy to do it. So thank you guys so much for watching. For all of you who celebrate Thanksgiving, I hope you have a happy Thanksgiving and you enjoy spending time with your family, and I will be back for a new video soon. So thank you for watching. Have a great day. Bye.